Coco Chanel, a name associated with luxury and elegance, hides behind an impressive struggle story. The story of an orphan girl who escaped the cruelty of life in an orphanage to make her way towards universality in defiance of all odds, customs, and traditions. Gabrielle Bonner Chanel, also known as Coco Chanel, a renowned fashion designer whose name has become synonymous with ageless elegance, was born on August 19, 1883, in the little French town of Saumur. Chanel's life was turned upside down at the age of 12 when her mother died of TB, leaving her and her sisters to care for themselves. Chanel's father, a salesman, made the tragic decision to abandon his daughters in an orphanage in the central French city of Corrèze, a location that would influence Chanel's young character in unimaginable ways. The orphanage, this imposing, brutal institution, has been a far cry from a loving home. Coco has been subjected to a strict and tidy lifestyle that has allowed little room for individualism or self-expression when she first walked through her doors. The severe dress code, including drab uniforms, served as a daily reminder of the limitations imposed on them, but this hard environment bred tenacity and independence. Despite her tragic circumstances, Chanel's placement at the orphanage was the best thing for her future because she learned to sew during that time. Chanel's brutal treatment, however, put her resilience to the test. Caregivers have shown little concern for the young females under their care due to their nasty behavior and ruthless treatment. Chanel personally experienced the draconian penalties enforced on young girls for minor offenses. Chanel received a particularly heinous punishment for a little transgression. She was caught calmly indoctrinating herself while working as a seamstress. The caregivers would not accept any interruption to their strict routine, dragging Chanel into a small, dark closet, forcing her to stand for hours on end as punishment, and subjecting her to several excruciating deprivations in the orphanage. The sparse, repetitious meals supplied little nutrition, and Chanel frequently went to bed famished, which made her stomach rumble, instilled in her constant state of deprivation tremendous autonomy and self-reliance as she learned to defend herself in such terrible situations. Furthermore, the absence of compassion and emotional support from caretakers had an irreversible impact on the young Chanel. After being refused comfort and direction in a supportive atmosphere, she developed complete self-awareness and learned to rely on her instincts and talents rather than others. This psychological hardening was eventually reflected in Chanel's unattractive worldview and unabashed approach to life and fashion. Chanel left the orphanage at the age of 18, briefly working in a hat shop in the French city of Moulins, before moving on to work as a vocalist at La Rotonde, a cabaret in Vichy, France. This has been a hard period. Society has viewed women working in this sector unethically. Because early 20th century nightclubs featured live music, dances, and a variety of performances, they were packed with bright lights and loud music, as well as people from diverse socioeconomic classes. Gabrielle was given the moniker Coco because of two well-known songs she sang. And one of the drawbacks of people's perceptions was that women working in nightclubs, such as Coco, donned bold and appealing outfits to attract attention. The general consensus was that these ladies were disrespectful and led unstable lives, which is why Coco was exposed to verbal and physical harassment by certain cabaret goers. She had to cope with ongoing harassment from both the public and some of her co-workers. According to several stories, Coco had considerable courage in coping with harassment. She was valiantly defending herself and demonstrating the power of her personality, which she got from her terrible upbringing at the orphanage, helping her gain the respect of those around her. Coco was able to use the difficult surroundings to build her personality and social abilities. Although working at nightclubs provided Coco with an opportunity to earn money, she had financial obstacles at the time because earnings were frequently uncertain because they were determined by public happiness and tips, and Coco was constantly exploited by the nightclub owners. It was difficult for her to establish a steady income. Despite the hurdles, Coco Chanel used her time at the club to broaden her knowledge base. She was able to use this chance to meet key players in the fashion and entertainment industries, one of which was Etienne Balsan, who provided financial and moral assistance. This partnership had a crucial role in her entree into the fashion business. Chanel met Etienne Balsan around the age of 20, and he promised to help her establish a hat-making project. In 1910, she founded her first boutique on Paris's Campan Street, selling hats, before expanding to Deauville and Biarritz, and starting to make garments. Chanel immediately ended her relationship with Etienne Balsan. One of his affluent friends recognized me as Arthur Boy Capil, and both men played key roles in Coco's first fashion initiative, which launched in fashion. There were numerous well-known fashion firms at the time, but Coco stood out due to her creative artistic vision and high standards. She paid attention to the smallest details in her designs, employed the finest fabrics and raw materials, and understood what women wanted, resulting in designs that expressed a strong, independent woman. Coco never ceased evolving and creating, and she was constantly on the lookout for fresh and unique ideas. Her first fashion success was a garment she created from an old shirt on a cold day. In response to repeated questions about where she acquired the dress, she famously told author Paul Moran, "My wealth was built on that old shirt I wore because it was cold in Deauville." Chanel rose to prominence, and her relationships with celebrities in the fields of French literature and art were strong as a result of their reliance on her to design various character costumes for French literary plays. In the 1920s, Chanel expanded its profitable business to unprecedented heights. She launched Chanel No. 5, the first fragrance named after a designer. Chanel once stated that the fragrance is the unforgettable, invisible accessory that heralds your arrival and prolongs your departure. Coco debuted the renowned Chanel suit in 1925, with styles that were groundbreaking at the time. It prioritized comfort over the limits of popular fashion, allowing ladies to wave goodbye to corsets and other restrictive apparel. In the 1920s, Chanel created another innovative design, the short black dress. Chanel utilized a color formerly linked with grief to demonstrate how exquisite it looked when worn in the evening. However, the outbreak of World War II in 1939 and the devastation it caused triggered a global economic crisis and had a significant negative impact on Chanel, which faced numerous challenges at the time, prompting it to close its stores and fashion house and lay off over 3,000 employees and workers. Chanel left Paris after the war and lived in Switzerland for a few years to avoid unfavorable consequences. After being accused of helping with the Germans, she spent some time in her remote house in Roquebrune. Despite these hurdles, Coco Chanel was able to make a successful return to the fashion industry in 1954. Chanel launched a new collection of her creations after a years-long hiatus, and while critics slammed her at first, her unique and daring feminine sense for design swiftly earned the adoration of buyers all over the world, and she was highly acclaimed in Europe and America. Its brand has resurfaced as one of the most prominent brands in the fashion industry, and it has been able to leave a lasting impression on the fashion world, thanks to its in-depth understanding of the fashion world and market demands. The hard circumstances Coco encountered at the start of her existence may have been invincible, but Coco's indomitable spirit refused to shatter. It stimulated its determination to overcome the limitations placed on it. This persistent attitude continued to form Coco Chanel's character, and she became a fierce defender of herself, learning how to fight the harsh environment with unwavering determination, which ultimately became her identity. During this trauma, Coco's independent character emerged, setting the framework for pioneering and autonomous thinking that would establish her status as the best pioneering designer who defied tradition and changed the fashion business. Coco Chanel died on January 10, 1971, at her Paris apartment, and hundreds gathered at Madeleine Church to say their goodbyes to the fashion icon. However, her legacy continues to this day. Coco Chanel has become a symbol of flair and luxury, making it one of the world's most popular brands. Coco Chanel's tale is an inspiration to everyone. It demonstrates that patience and determination can conquer any obstacle. We must believe in ourselves and work hard to achieve our goals, no matter how difficult the conditions. Among her quotations is, "Nature gives you the face you have at 20, and it's up to you to deserve the face you have at 50."